Part 24 Chapter 1. Fire Big Massive Muscular Arms, Giant Shoulders and Powerful Physiques. The Next Titan Evolution. Fire Iron Titans Saga, Part 24 Chapter 1. Thumbs up before this new chapter begins, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this series with bodybuilder fans, muscle growth enthusiasts, fitness models followers, classic physique supporters, and everyone who enjoys epic bodybuilding stories. After the extraordinary events of Part 23, where Samir Yasharoglu's championship journey, the Citadel of Legends, and the Code of the Eternal Champion forever changed the philosophy of the Fourth Horizon, a completely new era begins. The Titans have discovered that preserving greatness is only the first step. The next challenge is far more demanding, creating a generation capable of surpassing every champion that came before. Throughout the Fourth Horizon, athletes whisper about a forgotten prophecy stating that the era of big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders, and powerful physiques has finally arrived, and that only those willing to embrace absolute discipline will be worthy of entering the next stage of the Titan legacy. For several weeks following the closing of the Citadel of Legends, an unusual silence spread throughout the Fourth Horizon, yet beneath that silence every training hall remained alive with relentless determination as thousands of bodybuilders continued pushing themselves through brutally demanding workouts, refusing to allow the discoveries of the previous chapters to become nothing more than historical knowledge, because they understood that knowledge without action produces no transformation, while disciplined execution repeated consistently across years has the power to reshape not only a physique but the destiny of an individual. And as Ethan Vale walked among these athletes, he observed something remarkable. Every generation had begun training with greater purpose, every repetition carried greater intention, and every workout reflected the realization that true bodybuilding is measured by consistency rather than excitement. Inside the Hall of Titans, Adrian Wolf assembled the council once again, bringing together Raj Dangas, Samir Yasharoglu, Usman Ahmad, Andrey Kachalinin, Mazzara, Sultan Ali, and several newly promoted Titan instructors whose responsibility would be to guide the next generation through the most advanced developmental system ever constructed. And as the enormous projection table illuminated the chamber with newly translated archive fragments, Adrian explained that the ancient Titans had never viewed bodybuilding as the pursuit of isolated muscle groups but rather as the systematic construction of a complete human masterpiece, where giant shoulders enhanced structural dominance, massive muscular arms projected strength, a powerful chest represented resilience, an expansive back symbolized support, disciplined legs reflected stability, and every detail contributed to a unified expression of excellence. Samir Yasharoglu stood before the council as one of the strongest modern examples of those principles in practice, and although his achievements as IFBB World Champion 2024, Overall Europe Bodybuilding Champion 2026, and IFBB Pro had earned admiration across the bodybuilding world, he reminded the younger athletes that medals alone never build greatness because trophies merely recognize work that has already been completed, while genuine champions continue training with the same intensity after victory as they did before success arrived, understanding that every championship represents another starting point rather than a final destination. And this philosophy immediately resonated with Ethan because it echoed everything the Titan Protocol had been teaching since the earliest chapters of the saga. Raj Dangas then shifted the discussion toward one of the most requested subjects throughout the Fourth Horizon: how to develop truly big massive muscular arms capable of lamenting an elite physique rather than overpowering it, and he explained that many athletes mistakenly chase visual arm size while neglecting the structural foundation required to support continued growth, because enormous biceps without equally developed triceps create imbalance, Thick arms without strong shoulders diminish overall aesthetics, and impressive measurements without proportional symmetry ultimately reduce the visual authority of the physique, whereas the Titans pursued harmonious development through years of carefully structured progressive overload, intelligent programming, controlled recovery, and uncompromising technical execution. Usman Ahmad expanded upon this philosophy by focusing on giant shoulders, explaining that shoulder development has always been considered the architectural framework of an elite upper body because wide lateral deltoids create the dramatic V-taper admired in bodybuilding. Powerful rear deltoids enhance posture and three-dimensional depth, and strong overhead pressing ability reinforces the structural integrity required to sustain continued upper body growth, and according to both modern performance science and the oldest Titan manuscripts, athletes who neglect shoulder balance inevitably limit not only their visual potential but also their long-term performance capacity. As the council meeting continued, Ethan examined another recently restored archive fragment that appeared unlike anything previously translated because rather than describing a protocol or a championship, the document referred to an elite generation known simply as the architects of the perfect physique. Legendary individuals whose responsibility was not merely to build extraordinary bodies but to establish developmental standards capable of remaining effective for centuries regardless of changing eras, technologies, or competitive trends, and according to the surviving text these architects believed that the strongest physiques were built when muscle, discipline, knowledge, humility, and leadership advanced together without allowing any single quality to dominate the others. The revelation fascinated everyone inside the hall because it suggested that the fourth horizon had reached another turning point, one that would require every athlete to move beyond traditional concepts of bodybuilding and begin thinking like architects rather than competitors, designing physiques intended to represent excellence from every possible perspective instead of pursuing isolated achievements. And as Adrian carefully translated the final surviving lines of the manuscript, the council collectively realized that another hidden structure existed beyond the Citadel of Legends. It was not described as a hall. It was not described as a throne. It was not described as an academy. Instead, the ancient Titans called it the Forge of Titans. According to the fragmented records, only athletes who successfully embodied strength, aesthetics, discipline, leadership, consistency, and legacy would be invited to cross its gates. The room felt completely silent. Even the veteran champions exchanged uncertain glances. Because every discovery throughout the Iron Titans saga had been leading toward this moment. The Titan Protocol, the Colossus Protocol, the Iron Arm Ascension, the Eternal Arm Throne, the Aesthetic Dominion Path, the Living Monument, the Titan Legacy Ascension, the Citadel of Legends. Every chapter now appeared to be preparation. Preparation for the Forge, and somewhere beyond its gates, the greatest transformation in Titan history was waiting to begin. Fire to be continued in Part 24 Chapter 2. Thumbs up like the video if you enjoyed this chapter. Speech balloon comment, which creates the ultimate physique, big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders, complete body symmetry, or unwavering discipline. Bell subscribe and turn on notifications for Part 24 Chapter 2. Loudspeaker share with bodybuilder fans, muscle growth enthusiasts, fitness models followers, classic physique supporters, and strength communities worldwide. 24 Chapter 2. Fire big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders and powerful physiques. The Forge of Titans awakens fire. Iron Titans Saga, Part 24 Chapter 2. After the astonishing revelation of the Forge of Titans, the atmosphere throughout the Fourth Horizon changed in ways no athlete had ever witnessed before, because the ancient archives described the Forge not as another place where competitors simply trained harder or lifted heavier weights, but as the birthplace of every legendary Titan whose physique had become the standard by which future generations measured greatness. And as this knowledge spread across every academy, training complex, and performance institute connected to the Titan network, thousands of bodybuilders immediately realized that they were standing at the beginning of an entirely new era where big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders, powerful physiques, discipline, and leadership would no longer be separate ambitions but interconnected pillars supporting the complete evolution of the modern Titan, inspiring athletes to abandon short-term thinking in favor of a lifelong commitment to excellence that would redefine both their physiques and their character. Inside the Hall of Titans, Adrian Wolf carefully unfolded another collection of restored manuscripts recovered from beneath the deepest archive chambers, and unlike the instructional texts discovered during earlier chapters, these documents contain detailed observations recorded by the earliest architects of the perfect physique, individuals whose responsibility had been to study why certain athletes continued improving decade after decade while others reached impressive levels only to stagnate permanently. And according to those ancient scholars, the answer had never been hidden within secret exercises or miraculous routines but rather within the ability to maintain extraordinary consistency while continuously refining technique, recovery, nutrition, mental resilience, and structural balance, allowing every year of disciplined effort to multiply the value of the years that came before it, creating a cumulative transformation that eventually appeared almost impossible to ordinary observers despite being built through countless ordinary training sessions performed with exceptional dedication. Samir Yasharoglu stood beside the archive display while younger athletes observed every detail with complete attention, and he explained that earning the titles of IFBB World Champion 2024, Overall Europe Bodybuilding Champion 2026, and IFBB Pro required far more than exceptional performances on competition day because the real victories occurred during thousands of mornings when training continued despite fatigue, during countless evenings when recovery became more important than ego, and during every difficult season when discipline remained stronger than temporary emotion, reminding everyone that enormous muscular arms, broad shoulders, dense backs, thick chests, and balanced physiques are constructed long before judges ever evaluate a competitor on stage, making consistency the invisible architect behind every visible achievement. Raj Dangas then directed the discussion toward advanced arm specialization, explaining that many ambitious athletes mistakenly believe enormous arms can be developed simply by increasing the number of biceps exercises performed each week, whereas the Titan manuscripts consistently emphasize that true arm dominance emerges from comprehensive upper body integration in which powerful triceps generate thickness, disciplined biceps training refines shape and peak, heavy compound pressing develops structural density, rowing movements reinforce total arm involvement, grip strength enhances neurological efficiency, and shoulder stability protects long-term performance, allowing the arms to evolve naturally as part of a complete system instead of isolated muscles, and this philosophy immediately transformed the perspective of many young trainees who had previously focused only on short-term cosmetic improvements. Usman Ahmad continued by discussing the extraordinary importance of shoulder architecture, explaining that the Titans referred to the shoulders as the pillars of presence because they determine how every other upper body muscle is perceived, creating the visual framework that magnifies arm size, enhances chest proportions, broadens overall symmetry, and establishes the commanding silhouette admired throughout bodybuilding history. And according to both the ancient archive records and modern training science, exceptional shoulder development requires meticulous attention to lateral deltoid expansion, rear deltoid density, overhead pressing strength, scapular stability, mobility, and long-term recovery, demonstrating once again that elite physiques are never accidental but deliberately engineered over many years of intelligent progression. As Ethan Vale continued translating additional archive fragments, he encountered an extraordinary passage describing the purpose of the Forge of Titans itself, revealing that athletes who entered the Forge were not judged according to measurements, championship victories, or public recognition but according to a far more demanding standard known as the Harmony Index, a concept evaluating whether physical strength, technical mastery, emotional discipline, leadership, humility, perseverance, and the willingness to elevate others had developed together in balanced proportion, because the earliest Titans believed that greatness built without character would eventually collapse under its own weight, whereas greatness supported by wisdom could continue inspiring generation after generation without losing its power. The council remained silent as Adrian completed the final translation of the manuscript, because the closing passage described a final examination awaiting every athlete who reached the gates of the Forge, an examination unlike any previously encountered throughout the Iron Titans Saga, one that required competitors to confront not another opponent but the limitations hidden within themselves, forcing them to decide whether they pursued bodybuilding merely for recognition or because they genuinely desired continuous self-improvement regardless of applause, trophies, or external validation. And as Ethan slowly closed the archive, he realized that the Fourth Horizon was approaching the greatest challenge in its entire history. Far beyond the illuminated cities of the Fourth Horizon, beyond the Citadel of Legends and the ancient Hall of Immortal Champions, the colossal gates of the Forge of Titans began to emerge from the mountain mist for the first time in centuries, their immense iron surfaces engraved with thousands of names belonging to legendary athletes whose dedication had shaped the Titan legacy. And as the first rays of dawn reflected across those ancient gates, every member of the council understood that the next step would demand more than strength alone. It would demand complete transformation, not only of the body, but of the athlete, of the leader, and of the human being hidden beneath every champion. Fire to be continued in Part 24 Chapter 3. Thumbs up, like the video if you enjoyed this chapter. Speech balloon comment. What creates the ultimate bodybuilding legacy? Big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders, balanced physique development, or lifelong discipline? Bell subscribe and turn on notifications for Part 24 Chapter 3. Loudspeaker share with bodybuilder fans, muscle growth enthusiasts, classic physique supporters, fitness models followers, and strength communities worldwide. Part 24 Chapter 3. Fire big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders and powerful physiques entering the Forge of Titans. Fire Iron Titans Saga, Part 24 Chapter 3. Thumbs up before this chapter begins, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this series with fellow bodybuilder fans, fitness models enthusiasts, classic physique followers, muscle worship communities, and everyone who enjoys stories of discipline, transformation, and legendary physiques. Following the opening of the colossal gates of the Forge of Titans at the end of the previous chapter, the Fourth Horizon stands at the threshold of an era unlike anything recorded throughout the Titan archives, because for the first time the world's greatest bodybuilders, champions, coaches, and future legends will train under the same philosophy, seeking not merely bigger muscles or greater competitive success, but the complete evolution of the human physique into a living masterpiece defined by big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders, powerful physiques, unwavering discipline, and a legacy capable of inspiring generations still to come. As dawn illuminated the enormous mountain range surrounding the Forge of Titans, Ethan Vale, Adrian Wolf, Samir Yasharoglu, Raj Dangas, Usman Ahmad, Andrey Kachalinin, Mazzara, Sultan Ali, and dozens of elite athletes slowly approached the immense iron gates whose surface contained thousands of names carved into ancient steel, each belonging to an individual whose commitment to excellence had permanently influenced the Titan legacy. And while many expected the entrance to reveal magnificent halls filled with statues and trophies, they instead discovered something entirely unexpected: because beyond the gates stretched an endless landscape of training arenas, stone platforms, colossal lifting chambers, recovery sanctuaries, and educational halls where every aspect of bodybuilding, strength development, nutrition, movement quality, leadership, and mental resilience existed together as one unified system, demonstrating that the Titans had never separated physical training from intellectual growth, believing instead that truly elite bodybuilders were created only when both body and mind evolved simultaneously. Adrian Wolf paused before a monumental stone monument positioned at the center of the forge and began translating the inscription engraved across its surface, explaining that the forge had never existed to produce ordinary champions because competitions alone could not preserve civilization, whereas disciplined individuals capable of inspiring others could shape history itself. And according to the inscription, every athlete entering the forge accepted responsibility not only for building larger biceps, thicker triceps, broader shoulders, denser backs, stronger legs, and more aesthetic physiques, but also for protecting the principles of integrity, humility, patience, and consistency that allowed those physical achievements to exist, creating an inseparable connection between muscular development and personal character unlike anything found elsewhere within the bodybuilding world. Samir Yasharoglu quietly observed the enormous training complexes before turning toward the younger athletes who had gathered around him, and he explained that throughout his own competitive journey every visible improvement in his physique had been preceded by countless invisible victories over doubt, fatigue, disappointment, and impatience, because becoming an IFBB World Champion, an overall Europe bodybuilding champion, and an IFBB Pro required much more than extraordinary workouts, demanding years of disciplined nutrition, intelligent programming, meticulous recovery, technical precision, and an unwavering commitment to progress even during periods when no one else recognized the sacrifices being made. And as he spoke, the athletes gradually realized that the true foundation of massive muscular arms and giant shoulders was not hidden inside complicated routines but within the daily willingness to repeat fundamental habits with exceptional consistency. Raj Dangas then guided the next generation into what the archives identified as the Hall of Structural Development, an enormous circular arena dedicated entirely to understanding how elite physiques are constructed over decades rather than months, and while standing beneath gigantic anatomical diagrams created by the earliest architects of the perfect physique, he explained that many aspiring bodybuilders focus excessively on visual muscle size without first establishing the structural balance required to support continued growth, because oversized arms attached to underdeveloped shoulders diminish symmetry. Powerful shoulders unsupported by a strong back reduce overall stability, and impressive upper body development combined with neglected lower body training ultimately weakens the complete physique. Whereas the Titans pursued harmony by ensuring that every muscle group progressed together through carefully planned phases of progressive overload, intelligent recovery, and technical refinement. Usman Ahmad expanded the lesson by leading the athletes into another section of the forge known as the Chamber of Presence, where hundreds of enormous sculptures illustrated the progression from average physiques to legendary Titan forms, and as everyone studied the dramatic differences between each stage, he explained that giant shoulders represent far more than muscular size because they establish visual authority, amplify upper body proportions, reinforce posture, increase athletic functionality, and create the unmistakable silhouette associated with elite bodybuilding, emphasizing that lateral deltoids, rear deltoids, overhead pressing strength, shoulder stability, and mobility must evolve together if an athlete hopes to achieve the commanding appearance displayed by history's greatest champions. Meanwhile, Ethan Vale continued translating newly uncovered archive fragments that had remained untouched for centuries, eventually discovering one manuscript unlike any previously encountered because instead of describing exercises, nutrition, or competition strategies, it outlined the psychological transformation expected from every athlete entering the forge, declaring that true titans eventually stop training merely to become stronger than others and instead dedicate themselves to becoming stronger than the previous version of themselves every single day, understanding that personal evolution remains limitless when measured against one's own potential rather than external comparison, and this revelation resonated deeply throughout the entire council because it unified every lesson uncovered since the beginning of the Iron Titans Saga. As evening settled across the mountain peaks surrounding the forge, Adrian activated the final archive projection recovered from the entrance chamber, revealing a map extending far beyond the visible boundaries of the forge itself, and according to the surviving inscriptions, another hidden destination awaited those capable of completing every stage of the forge's demanding educational system, a destination never before translated within the history of the Fourth Horizon and described only by a single title engraved in enormous ancient lettering. The council watched silently. No one spoke. The air itself seemed heavier. Then the final words appeared. The ascension of the Titan Emperor. Even the legendary champions exchanged uncertain glances. Because they understood immediately. The forge was never the final destination. It was only the beginning of the greatest challenge the Titans had ever created. And somewhere beyond the mountains, beyond the archives, beyond the legends, the next evolution of bodybuilding was waiting. Fire to be continued in Part 24 Chapter 4. Thumbs up, like the video if you enjoyed this chapter. Speech balloon comment. What is the foundation of the ultimate physique? B. IG massive muscular arms, giant shoulders, balanced development, or relentless discipline. Bell subscribe and turn on notifications for Part 24 Chapter 4. Loudspeaker share with bodybuilder fans, fitness models followers, muscle worship communities, classic physique enthusiasts, and strength athletes worldwide. Part 24 Chapter 4. Fire big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders and powerful physiques. The ascension of the Titan Emperor begins. Fire, Iron Titans Saga, Part 24 Chapter 4. Thumbs up before this chapter begins, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this series with fellow bodybuilder fans, fitness models enthusiasts, classic physique followers, muscle worship communities, and everyone who is inspired by stories of discipline, transformation, and legendary physiques. As the revelation of the ascension of the Titan Emperor echoes throughout the Fourth Horizon, every athlete realizes that the journey has entered its most demanding phase yet, because the Forge of Titans was never intended to create ordinary champions or even world-class competitors. It was designed to identify the rare individuals capable of combining extraordinary physical development, unwavering discipline, elite leadership, and lasting influence into a single identity, proving that true greatness extends far beyond trophies and becomes a force capable of inspiring generations of bodybuilders and strength athletes across the world. When the massive projection displaying the ascension of the Titan Emperor finally disappeared, an overwhelming silence settled across the Forge of Titans as every athlete, coach, and legendary champion present attempted to comprehend the magnitude of what had just been revealed. Because throughout every previous stage of the Iron Titans Saga they had believed that each discovery represented the highest level of human development, only to realize repeatedly that another layer of knowledge, another philosophy, and another challenge had always existed beyond the horizon, waiting patiently for those who possessed the discipline necessary to continue advancing. And Ethan Vale immediately recognized that the greatest obstacle ahead would not be heavier weights, more difficult training systems, or increasingly advanced nutritional protocols, but rather the constant struggle to remain humble while standing on the edge of unprecedented achievement. Adrian Wolf slowly guided the council into the oldest section of the forge, a colossal chamber constructed entirely from polished black stone whose walls were covered with enormous murals depicting the earliest Titan Emperors leading generations of athletes through eras of constant progress. And as the archive lights gradually illuminated these ancient works of art, Adrian translated the accompanying inscriptions explaining that the title of Titan Emperor had never been awarded to the strongest lifter, the largest bodybuilder, or the most decorated champion, but instead belonged to the individual whose physical excellence, wisdom, discipline, resilience, and willingness to elevate others reached such extraordinary harmony that future civilizations continued benefiting from those achievements centuries after the individual had disappeared from history, making leadership rather than personal glory the defining characteristic of the highest Titan rank. Standing before one of the largest murals, Samir Yasharoglu reflected quietly upon his own journey from ambitious competitor to IFBB World Champion 2024, overall Europe Bodybuilding Champion 2026, and IFBB Pro, explaining to the younger athletes gathered around him that every impressive stage appearance they admired had been built through years of invisible discipline. Countless mornings beginning before sunrise, meticulous attention to nutrition, unwavering commitment to recovery, relentless technical refinement, and the willingness to embrace ordinary routines day after day until those ordinary habits eventually produced extraordinary results, reminding everyone that big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders, and powerful physiques are not created by extraordinary moments but by extraordinary consistency applied to ordinary days over many years. Raj Dangas then introduced what the archives referred to as the principle of complete muscular. Architecture, an advanced Titan philosophy teaching that the visual dominance of an elite physique depends not upon the isolated size of any individual muscle group but upon the precise relationship between every structural component of the body, because truly massive arms derive much of their visual impact from broad shoulders, thick upper backs, powerful chests, balanced forearms, and proportional waist development, while giant shoulders achieve their commanding appearance only when supported by disciplined posture, technical movement quality, and complete upper body integration, illustrating once again that bodybuilding reaches its highest expression through harmony rather than exaggeration, balance rather than imbalance, and intelligent progression rather than reckless ambition. Usman Ahmad expanded the discussion by leading the athletes into an enormous training arena known within the archives as the Hall of Endless Progress, where legendary training platforms surrounded a central monument engraved with thousands of personal records achieved by generations of Titan athletes. And as everyone observed the names carved into ancient steel, he explained that each accomplishment represented only a temporary milestone rather than a permanent destination because every Titan understood that physical development remains an endless process of refinement, adaptation, and continuous learning, meaning that no matter how impressive a physique becomes, another opportunity for improvement always exists for those willing to continue growing both physically and mentally. Meanwhile, Ethan Vale continued translating newly restored manuscripts discovered beneath the Hall of Endless Progress and encountered one of the most remarkable historical records recovered since entering the Forge, revealing that the earliest Titan emperors measured their success not according to championships accumulated or statues erected in their honor but according to the number of future champions whose lives had been permanently influenced by their example, because they believed that genuine greatness multiplies itself through mentorship, inspiration, and disciplined leadership, allowing one individual's commitment to excellence to create countless additional champions across future generations, transforming bodybuilding from a personal pursuit into a shared legacy extending far beyond the lifespan of any single athlete. As night descended across the mountains surrounding the Forge, Adrian activated another ancient projection hidden within the deepest archive vault, revealing a celestial map unlike any previously discovered, its countless illuminated pathways stretching far beyond the boundaries of the fourth horizon toward a distant destination mentioned only once within the oldest surviving Titan records. And according to the final surviving inscription, Every athlete capable of completing the ascension of the Titan Emperor would eventually receive an invitation to enter a place considered sacred even by the earliest founders of the Titan civilization, a place believed to contain the complete origin of every philosophy, every protocol, every system of discipline, and every principle of human excellence ever preserved throughout the Titan legacy. The council remained motionless. The projection slowly brightened. Ancient symbols emerged across the sky. Then one final name appeared. The Eternal Temple of the First Titans. Even Adrian Wolf lowered his voice. Because no living Titan had ever reached it. No complete map existed. Only fragments, legends, and promises. Yet everyone inside the forge understood the truth. Their greatest adventure had not reached its conclusion. It had only uncovered an even greater beginning. Fire to be continued in Part 24 Chapter 5. Thumbs up like the video if you enjoyed this chapter. Speech balloon comment. What is the ultimate symbol of greatness? Big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders, powerful physiques, or a legacy that NS Perez generations. Bell subscribe and turn on notifications for Part 24 Chapter 5. Loudspeaker share with bodybuilder fans, fitness models enthusiasts, muscle worship communities, classic physique supporters, and strength athletes around the world. Part 24 Chapter 5. Fire big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders and powerful physiques. The Eternal Temple of the First Titans. Fire Iron Titans Saga, Part 24 Chapter 5. Thumbs up before this chapter begins, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this series with fellow bodybuilder fans, classic physique enthusiasts, fitness models followers, muscle growth communities, and everyone who enjoys epic stories of transformation, discipline, and legendary physiques. Following the revelation of the Eternal Temple of the First Titans, the entire Fourth Horizon enters a period unlike any previously recorded within the Titan archives because every discovery made throughout the Iron Titans Saga, from the Titan Protocol and the Colossus Protocol to the Citadel of Legends, the Forge of Titans, and the ascension of the Titan Emperor, now appears to have been preparing humanity for a destination so ancient and so mysterious that even the earliest Titan emperors regarded it with reverence, believing it to be the birthplace of every philosophy that had ever shaped the evolution of big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders, powerful physiques, unwavering discipline, and enduring legacy. For many days the council remained inside the Forge of Titans studying the celestial map revealed during the previous gathering, and although countless routes stretched across the projection in every direction, only one narrow pathway continued beyond the known boundaries of the Fourth Horizon toward the location identified as the Eternal Temple of the First Titans, leading Adrian Wolf to explain that this route had disappeared from historical records thousands of years earlier because the founders believed that knowledge of the temple should never become available to those seeking power without wisdom, strength without humility, or recognition without discipline, ensuring that only individuals who genuinely embodied the complete Titan philosophy could ever hope to discover the origin of the civilization that had inspired generations of bodybuilders to pursue excellence with patience, intelligence, and relentless consistency. Samir Yasharoglu stood beside Ethan Vale while carefully observing the ancient projection, reflecting upon the extraordinary distance between his earliest training sessions and the remarkable journey that had eventually led him to become an IFBB World Champion, an overall Europe bodybuilding champion, and an IFBB Pro. And he explained to the younger athletes that although many spectators admire the final physique displayed beneath competition lights, very few truly understand the countless years of disciplined preparation hidden behind every visible achievement, Because massive muscular arms are built one controlled repetition at a time. Giant shoulders develop through thousands of technically precise training sessions. Balanced physiques emerge through consistent recovery and intelligent nutrition, and genuine confidence grows gradually as discipline replaces uncertainty, reminding everyone that the greatest transformations are always invisible long before they become impossible to ignore. Raj Dangas gathered the next generation inside a monumental chamber known as the Hall of Structural Perfection, where enormous sculptures illustrated every stage of muscular development from beginner to Titan Emperor. And while examining these masterpieces, he explained that the earliest architects of the perfect physique never measured success according to temporary arm circumference or shoulder width alone, but instead evaluated how effectively every muscle group contributed to total harmony. Because truly impressive biceps require equally developed triceps, broad shoulders demand a powerful upper back, thick chests rely upon structural stability, strong forearms enhance complete arm aesthetics, and disciplined leg development provides the foundation supporting every aspect of upper body dominance, proving once again that elite bodybuilding rewards balance rather than excess and intelligent progression rather than impatient ambition. Usman Ahmad then led the athletes toward an enormous circular arena surrounded by towering stone columns engraved with thousands of ancient training principles, and as everyone entered the chamber he explained that this location had served as the final educational stage before athletes attempted the journey toward the eternal temple. Because here they learned that physical development reaches its highest expression only when combined with emotional resilience, mental discipline, technical precision, leadership, humility, and a genuine willingness to elevate others instead of competing solely for personal recognition, emphasizing that every champion eventually discovers a moment when external victories become less meaningful than the opportunity to inspire another individual to begin pursuing greatness with the same determination. Meanwhile, Ethan Vale continued translating newly restored manuscripts hidden beneath the Hall of Structural Perfection and eventually uncovered one of the oldest surviving documents in the entire Titan archive, revealing that the founders of the civilization believed every generation would eventually face a decisive choice between two different paths. The path of temporary glory, where athletes pursued admiration through short-lived accomplishments, and the path of eternal progress, where discipline became a lifelong identity rather than a seasonal objective, allowing each generation to preserve and expand the accumulated wisdom inherited from those who came before them. And this discovery deeply affected the council because it explained why so many remarkable civilizations throughout history had risen quickly only to disappear when consistency gave way to complacency. As preparations for the expedition continued, Adrian Wolf announced that only a small delegation would travel toward the eternal temple of the first Titans, selecting Ethan Vale, Samir Yasharoglu, Raj Dangas, Usman Ahmad, Andrey Kachalinin, Mazzara, and Sultan Ali to represent every major stage of the Titan legacy, believing that together they embodied the diverse qualities required to understand whatever truths remained hidden beyond the known world. And although each individual possessed unique strengths, they all recognized that the journey ahead would test far more than muscular development, demanding patience, trust, leadership, and the willingness to confront truths capable of redefining everything previously believed about bodybuilding itself. As sunrise illuminated the highest mountain peaks surrounding the forge, the selected delegation gathered before an enormous gateway carved directly into solid granite, its ancient mechanisms awakening for the first time in countless centuries as the celestial symbols discovered within the archive aligned perfectly with the massive stone structure. And while the gates slowly opened, an endless road stretching beyond the visible horizon emerged from the morning mist, bordered by towering statues depicting the earliest Titans carrying neither trophies nor weapons but books, tools, and training equipment, symbolizing that civilization advances not through domination but through knowledge, discipline, and continuous self-improvement. No one spoke. Every heartbeat seemed louder than before. The wind carried only silence. And somewhere beyond that ancient road, beyond the mountains, beyond the forge, beyond the fourth horizon itself, the origin of every Titan legend was waiting. The greatest discovery in bodybuilding history had finally begun. Fire to be continued in Part 24 Chapter 6. Thumbs up like the video if you enjoyed this chapter. Speech balloon comment. Would you choose the path of temporary glory or the path of eternal progress? Bell subscribe and turn on notifications for Part 24 Chapter 6. Loudspeaker share with bodybuilder fans, fitness models followers, classic physique enthusiasts, muse. Clee growth communities, and strength athletes worldwide. Part 24 Chapter 6. Fire big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders and powerful physiques before the final crossing fire Iron Titans Saga. As the delegation stood at the edge of the abyss leading toward the eternal temple of the first Titans, the atmosphere across the entire plateau became heavier and more silent than anything they had experienced since the beginning of the Iron Titans Saga, because this was no longer a stage of discovery, nor a phase of training philosophy, nor even an extension of the Titan Legacy archives, but instead a direct confrontation with the ultimate boundary between what had been known and what had never been reached. And as Ethan Vale, Samir Yasharoglu, Raj Dangas, Usman Ahmad, Andrey Kachalinin, Bobby Mazzara, and Sultan Ali observed the impossible structure across the void, they all realized that the journey toward big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders, and powerful physiques had evolved far beyond physical development and had become a test of identity, discipline, and legacy itself. The wind flowing through the abyss carried ancient resonance patterns embedded within the environment, almost as if the land itself was reacting to the presence of the delegation. And according to the final translation completed by Ethan Vale from the archive fragments discovered earlier in the Forge of Titans, the first Titans had designed this final crossing not as a physical challenge but as a psychological and philosophical threshold, where only individuals who had fully internalized the principles of discipline, consistency, humility, and long-term progression could perceive the correct path forward, because those who sought only external achievement would see only emptiness, while those who understood the deeper structure of development would recognize the invisible bridge formed by accumulated effort, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to continuous self-improvement. Samir Yasharoglu stood at the front of the group, reflecting on his journey from early training sessions to becoming an IFBB World Champion 2024, an overall Europe Bodybuilding Champion 2026, and a recognized IFBB Pro, and as he looked across the abyss, he explained quietly that every stage victory he had achieved in his career was not the result of singular moments of intensity but rather the accumulation of countless disciplined repetitions performed in silence, where every set of training, every nutritional decision, every recovery cycle, and every moment of mental resilience had contributed to the construction of the physique that the world now recognized, reminding everyone present that massive arms, giant shoulders, and balanced physiques are not created in moments of inspiration but in years of structured consistency repeated without interruption. Raj Dangas then stepped forward and carefully interpreted another ancient inscription carved into the stone platform beneath their feet, revealing that the first Titans believed the greatest limitation faced by any athlete was never physical capacity but psychological resistance to long-term repetition, because while many individuals are capable of intense effort for short periods, only a small number can maintain structured discipline across years without losing direction. And it was this rare ability that distinguished ordinary bodybuilders from those who eventually became part of the Titan legacy, as the inscription emphasized that true transformation occurs not when training becomes difficult, but when difficulty becomes normal and discipline becomes identity. Usman Ahmad expanded upon this understanding by explaining that the human physique itself reflects the principles of adaptation embedded within Titan philosophy, because big massive muscular arms develop only when triceps, biceps, forearms, and shoulder stability evolve together through coordinated progression, while giant shoulders require balanced development of lateral, rear, and anterior deltoids supported by structural strength across the upper back, and according to the ancient teachings, any imbalance in development eventually limits not only aesthetics but also long-term performance potential, reinforcing the idea that bodybuilding is fundamentally a system of interconnected growth rather than isolated muscle expansion. As Ethan Vale continued analyzing the final fragments retrieved from the Forge of Titans, he discovered a passage describing what the first Titans called the threshold of invisible progress, a state in which athletes no longer perceive immediate changes in their physique but continue improving internally through neurological adaptation, muscular efficiency, and structural refinement, meaning that the most important stages of development often occur without visible external transformation, and according to the text, this phase is where most athletes fail because they mistakenly assume progress has stopped, when in reality they are entering the most critical stage of long-term growth. Andrey Kachalinin added that this concept was directly linked to the philosophy of the cycle of eternal development, which stated that every elite physique in Titan history was built through continuous phases of adaptation followed by refinement, where athletes repeatedly adjusted training methods, improved movement efficiency, optimized recovery strategies, and enhanced mental resilience, ensuring that their progression never remained static, and this constant evolution was what allowed certain champions to maintain dominance across decades while others faded after brief periods of success. As the delegation prepared themselves for what lay beyond the abyss, Adrian Wolf activated the final projection recovered from the deepest archive chamber of the Forge of Titans, revealing a faint structural outline beneath the temple that had never been previously visible. And according to the ancient mapping system, the eternal temple of the first Titans was not the final destination but rather the gateway to a deeper system of knowledge known as the core of Titan origin, a place where the original principles of physique development, discipline, and human potential were first established before being distributed across generations. The revelation caused a profound silence among the group, because it confirmed that everything they had experienced, from the Titan Protocol to the Citadel of Legends, from the Forge of Titans to the ascension of the Titan Emperor, had only been preparation for something even more fundamental, something that would redefine not only bodybuilding but the understanding of human development itself. And as the sun began to disappear beyond the horizon, casting long shadows across the abyss, the delegation stood united at the edge of the unknown, realizing that the final crossing would require more than physical strength, more than massive arms or giant shoulders, and more than any championship experience they had ever achieved. It would require complete transformation of mind, discipline, and identity. And beyond that crossing, the truth of the first Titans was waiting. Fire to be continued in Part 24 Chapter 7. Thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe, share. Speech balloon comment. What is harder, building massive arms, giant shoulders, or maintaining discipline for a lifetime? Bell subscribe for the final chapter. Loudspeaker share with bodybuilding, fitness motivation, classic physique, muscle growth, and strength communities worldwide. Part 24 Chapter 7 Fire Big Massive Muscular Arms, Giant Shoulders and Powerful Physiques. The Path Beyond the Fourth Horizon. Fire Iron Titans Saga. As the colossal gateway of the Eternal Temple route fully opened and the ancient stone mechanism finally locked into place after centuries of silence, the selected delegation led by Ethan Vale, Samir Yasharoglu, Raj Dangas, Usman Ahmad, Andrey Kachalinin, Mazzara, and Sultan Ali stepped forward into a path that no modern athlete had ever walked before, And in that moment the entire fourth horizon felt as if time itself had slowed down, because the journey they were entering was no longer simply about bodybuilding, competition preparation, or the pursuit of big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders, and powerful physiques, but about confronting the deepest origins of discipline, legacy, and human potential that had shaped every training philosophy ever known in the Titan archives. The further they advanced along the ancient road, the more the environment began to change in ways that defied conventional understanding, because the landscape surrounding them was not merely physical terrain but appeared to be structured as a living archive, with enormous stone formations engraved with training principles, biomechanical diagrams, and philosophical inscriptions that described the earliest understanding of muscle growth, adaptation, recovery, and structural development, suggesting that the first Titans did not simply train their bodies but instead studied them as living systems capable of continuous evolution when guided by discipline, patience, and precise execution repeated over vast periods of time. Samir Yasharoglu walked in silence beside Ethan Vale, reflecting upon everything that had brought him from early training sessions to becoming an IFBB World Champion 2024, overall Europe Bodybuilding Champion 2026, and recognized IFBB Pro. And as he observed the ancient inscriptions lining the path, he realized that every principle carved into the stone mirrored the same truths he had experienced throughout his career, because massive arms were never built through random effort but through structured progression. Giant shoulders were not created through short-term intensity but through long-term consistency, and powerful physiques were not the result of motivation alone but of identity, discipline, and an unbreakable commitment to continuous improvement even when external validation was absent. Raj Dangas then paused near a massive monolith positioned at the center of the path, and as he translated the inscription engraved across its surface, he explained that the earliest Titans believed physical transformation was only the visible expression of a deeper internal evolution, because true strength was defined not by the size of one's muscles but by the ability to remain consistent when progress slowed, to remain disciplined when motivation disappeared, and to remain focused when external distractions attempted to disrupt long-term development. And according to the inscription, those who failed to master this internal discipline would eventually lose all physical progress regardless of their initial potential, while those who mastered it would continue evolving indefinitely. Usman Ahmad added that the architecture of the body itself reflected the philosophy of the Titans, because every muscle group served a specific structural purpose within the system of human movement, where arms expressed strength and precision, shoulders defined presence and dominance, the back provided support and stability, the chest represented resilience and expansion, and the legs grounded the entire physique in balance and power, demonstrating that the pursuit of big massive muscular arms and giant shoulders could never be separated from full body development without compromising the integrity of the entire structure, reinforcing once again that true bodybuilding excellence is built through harmony rather than isolation. As the delegation continued deeper into the ancient route, Ethan Vale began noticing that the inscriptions were gradually shifting in complexity, moving from basic training principles toward philosophical revelations describing the ultimate purpose of the Titan civilization. And according to these writings, the first Titans believed that every generation of athletes would eventually face a defining choice between pursuing temporary recognition through physical achievement or committing themselves to the preservation of knowledge that would outlast their own existence, a decision that determined whether a champion would be remembered for their physique alone or for the legacy they created through influence, mentorship, and the transmission of discipline. Andrey Kachalinin then interpreted another series of inscriptions describing the concept known as the cycle of eternal development, which explained that the greatest physiques in Titan history were not those that reached a final peak and stopped improving, but those that continued evolving across decades through constant refinement of training methods, nutritional strategies, recovery systems, and mental discipline, proving that bodybuilding at its highest level is not a destination but an ongoing process of transformation that only ends when discipline itself is abandoned. Eventually, after what felt like hours of continuous travel through the shifting landscape of ancient knowledge, the delegation reached a vast open plateau where the road ended abruptly at the edge of an enormous abyss. And across that abyss stood a structure so massive that it seemed to merge architecture, mountain, and memory into a single impossible formation, and although no signs identified it directly, every member of the group instinctively understood what they were witnessing. This was the entrance to the eternal temple of the first Titans. No gates were visible, no guards stood watch, only silence, only distance, only something far greater than anything they had ever encountered within the fourth horizon. Ethan Vale stepped forward first, realizing that everything they had discovered, from the Forge of Titans to the ascension of the Titan Emperor, had been guiding them toward this singular point where history, philosophy, and physical evolution converged into one final origin. And as he looked across the abyss toward the temple, he understood that the true meaning of bodybuilding had never been about comparison or competition alone, but about the endless pursuit of becoming a stronger version of oneself while contributing to the growth of others. Samir Yasharoglu placed a steady hand on Ethan's shoulder, and without speaking, both of them understood that what lay ahead was not simply another chapter in the Iron Titans Saga, but the beginning of something that would redefine everything they believed about strength, discipline, and legacy. And as the wind moved through the ancient plateau, carrying the echoes of centuries of forgotten titans, the final truth became clear. The journey was no longer about reaching the temple. It was about what they would become in order to enter it. Fire. End of part 24. Thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe, share. Speech balloon comment. What truly defines a titan? Massive arms, giant shoulders, powerful physique, or eternal discipline? Bell. Stay tuned for part 25. Loudspeaker. Share with bodybuilding, fitness motivation, classic physique, muscle growth, and strength communities worldwide. Part 24. Final chapter. Fire. Big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders and powerful physiques. The eternal crossing of the first Titans. Fire. Iron Titans Saga. As the sun finally disappeared beyond the horizon and the last traces of daylight faded over the abyss leading to the eternal temple of the first Titans, the entire delegation stood in complete silence, because what lay before them was no longer just a physical boundary between two lands but the final separation between everything they had ever known about bodybuilding, discipline, and human potential, and everything they were about to understand for the first time. And in that moment, Ethan Vale, Samir Yasharoglu, Raj Dangas, Usman Ahmad, Andrey Kachalinin, Mazzara, and Sultan Ali all felt the same realization forming within them. That the journey toward big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders, and powerful physiques had never truly been about training alone, but about becoming the type of individuals capable of carrying knowledge, responsibility, and legacy across generations without losing the discipline required to sustain it. The abyss in front of them seemed endless, yet the ancient inscriptions discovered throughout the Forge of Titans, the Citadel of Legends, and the Hall of Immortal Champions now revealed their final meaning. Because according to the first Titans, the void was never meant to be crossed through strength alone, but through understanding, and those who relied only on physical ability would see nothing but emptiness, while those who had fully internalized the principles of structured progression, long-term discipline, and consistent self-improvement would perceive the invisible path formed by accumulated effort, patience, and mastery over time, a path that could not be seen by the eyes but could only be recognized by those who had built themselves through years of unwavering dedication. Samir Yasharoglu stepped forward once more, his presence representing the modern embodiment of everything the Titan legacy had preserved, from his transformation into an IFBB World Champion 2024, to his achievement as overall Europe Bodybuilding Champion 2026, and his status as an IFBB Pro. And as he looked across the abyss, he explained that every stage of his journey had been built on repetition rather than revelation, on discipline rather than motivation, and on consistency rather than emotion, because massive arms do not appear through sudden breakthroughs but through thousands of controlled repetitions performed with precision. Giant shoulders are not created through short bursts of intensity but through long-term structural development, and powerful physiques are not achieved through temporary effort but through a lifetime of commitment to improvement that continues even when external validation disappears. Raj Dangas then carefully examined the final inscription etched into the stone platform beneath their feet, translating words that had survived untouched for centuries, and according to the first Titans, the greatest enemy of any athlete was not weight, resistance, or physical limitation, but inconsistency, because inconsistency destroys progression, interrupts adaptation, and prevents the body from reaching its full potential. And the inscription declared that only those who mastered consistency would ever understand the true nature of transformation, where progress is not measured in days or weeks but in years of accumulated discipline that eventually reshapes both body and identity into something far greater than their original form. Usman Ahmad added that the structure of the human body itself reflects this philosophy, because every muscle group develops in relation to the others, and when big massive muscular arms are built correctly, they are supported by strong shoulders, a powerful back, and a balanced physique that allows the entire structure to function as one unified system, while giant shoulders create the visual dominance necessary for Part 24 Final Chapter Fire Big Massive Muscular Arms, Giant Shoulders and Powerful Physiques. The Eternal Crossing of the First Titans. Fire Iron Titans Saga. As the sun finally disappeared beyond the horizon and the last traces of daylight faded over the abyss leading to the eternal temple of the first Titans, the entire delegation stood in complete silence, because what lay before them was no longer just a physical boundary between two lands but the final separation between everything they had ever known about bodybuilding, discipline, and human potential, and everything they were about to understand for the first time. And in that moment Ethan Vale, Samir Yasharoglu, Raj Dangas, Usman Ahmad, Andrey Kachalinin, Bobby Mazzara, and Sultan Ali all felt the same realization forming within them. That the journey toward big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders, and powerful physiques had never truly been about training alone, but about becoming the type of individuals capable of carrying knowledge, responsibility, and legacy across generations without losing the discipline required to sustain it. The abyss in front of them seemed endless, yet the ancient inscriptions discovered throughout the Forge of Titans, the Citadel of Legends, and the Hall of Immortal Champions now revealed their final meaning, because according to the first Titans, the void was never meant to be crossed through strength alone, but through understanding, and those who relied only on physical ability would see nothing but emptiness, while those who had fully internalized the principles of structured progression, long-term discipline, and consistent self-improvement would perceive the invisible path formed by accumulated effort, patience, and mastery over time, a path that could not be seen by the eyes but could only be recognized by those who had built themselves through years of unwavering dedication. Samir Yasharoglu stepped forward once more, his presence representing the modern embodiment of everything the Titan legacy had preserved, From his transformation into an IFBB World Champion 2024, to his achievement as overall Europe Bodybuilding Champion 2026, and his status as an IFBB Pro, and as he looked across the abyss, he explained that every stage of his journey had been built on repetition rather than revelation, on discipline rather than motivation, and on consistency rather than emotion, because massive arms do not appear through sudden breakthroughs but through thousands of controlled repetitions performed with precision. Giant shoulders are not created through short bursts of intensity but through long-term structural development, and powerful physiques are not achieved through temporary effort but through a lifetime of commitment to improvement that continues even when external validation disappears. Raj Dangas then carefully examined the final inscription etched into the stone platform beneath their feet, translating words that had survived untouched for centuries, and according to the first Titans, the greatest enemy of any athlete was not weight, resistance, or physical limitation, but inconsistency, because inconsistency destroys progression, interrupts adaptation, and prevents the body from reaching its full potential. And the inscription declared that only those who mastered consistency would ever understand the true nature of transformation, where progress is not measured in days or weeks but in years of accumulated discipline that eventually reshapes both body and identity into something far greater than their original form. Usman Ahmad added that the structure of the human body itself reflects this philosophy, because every muscle group develops in relation to the others, and when big massive muscular arms are built correctly, they are supported by strong shoulders, a powerful back, and a balanced physique that allows the entire structure to function as one unified system, while giant shoulders create the visual dominance necessary are elite aesthetics but require harmony with the chest, arms, and upper back to maintain proportional integrity, reinforcing once again that true bodybuilding is not about isolated excellence but about complete physical architecture built through disciplined progression over time. As Ethan Vale continued interpreting the final surviving fragments from the deepest archives, he discovered the ultimate teaching of the first Titans, a concept known as the eternal principle of becoming, which stated that no athlete ever reaches a final form, because every level of development simply reveals a higher level of potential waiting to be unlocked. And according to this philosophy, even the greatest champions are not defined by what they have achieved, but by their willingness to continue evolving beyond what they already are, making the journey of bodybuilding an endless process of refinement, adaptation, and self-mastery that extends far beyond competition and into the very essence of human growth. Andrey Kachalinin then concluded the final interpretation by explaining that the eternal temple of the first Titans was never meant to be a destination of arrival but rather a threshold of understanding, where those who reached it would finally comprehend that the true purpose of the Titan legacy was not to create the biggest physiques or the strongest competitors, but to preserve the knowledge that allows each generation to surpass the last, ensuring that discipline, structure, and consistency remain alive long after individual champions have disappeared from history. As silence fell across the entire plateau, the delegation finally understood what the first Titans had been trying to teach them from the very beginning of their journey: that bodybuilding, at its highest level, is not a sport defined by comparison or victory, but a lifelong commitment to becoming better than yesterday, to refining the body with patience, and to building a legacy that continues influencing others even in absence. The abyss remained. The temple remained unseen. But the path was no longer unknown. Because it was never a path across land or stone. It was a path built within the mind. And only those who had mastered discipline, consistency, and purpose could ever walk it. As the final light disappeared completely from the fourth horizon, the Iron Titans Saga reached its most profound conclusion yet, leaving behind not an ending, but an eternal beginning. Fire. End of part 24. Thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe, share. Speech balloon comment. What defines a true Titan? big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders, powerful physiques, or eternal discipline? Stay tuned for the next evolution of the Iron Titans saga. Loudspeakers share with bodybuilding, fitness motivation, classic physique, muscle growth, and strength communities worldwide. Part 24 Full video description Fire Iron Titans Saga Fire. Big massive muscular arms, giant shoulders and powerful physiques, the Forge of Titans and the Eternal Crossing. This is part 24 of the Iron Titans saga, continuing the epic bodybuilding universe where discipline, legacy, massive physiques, and Titan philosophy merge into a single legendary storyline. This chapter follows Ethan Vale, Samir Yasharoglu IFBB World Champion 2024 First Place Medal Overall Europe Champion 2026 Flag European Union IFBB Pro Raj Dangas, Usman Ahmad, Andrey Kachalinin, Bobby Mazzara, and Sultan Ali as they reach the deepest layers of the Titan legacy. The story continues beyond the Forge of Titans, the Citadel of Legends, and the Hall of Immortal Champions, leading toward the eternal temple of the first Titans and the final revelation of human physical evolution. Biceps Part 24 Story Overview. In this chapter, the Titans uncover the Forge of Titans Awakening Fire.